It's Saturday morning, and the Gant men have made a declaration. We are going to host our first manly man male bonding breakfast. Now, if you don't know anything about men, we think better with food. So we picked a great restaurant. So we're at a restaurant, and we've decided that it's time for us to conquer some of our problems of the world. And in doing that, we decided that we needed to get going. So we're at breakfast, and just like every other man, you're like, what do we do? You really need a woman to help you get started. So we do what we men do best, small talk. We talked about sports, like why did my dad like the Cleveland Browns? I mean, nobody likes the Cleveland Browns. We talked about politics. We talked about religion. We all go to the same church. And finally, we get to the point to where we actually cross about what's going on in modern world. We were going through a major real estate bubble, and the market had blown up. And I was with my family, so I felt really comfortable with them saying, I feel like I'm real estate poor. We bought this big house. And the deal was that years before, I had purchased the most amazing house. 5 acres of land, 5 bedrooms, 6.5 baths, all on the most amazing lake that you could ever want to see. So my dad pipes up and he says, dude, you're the financial guru of the family. I thought you had all this under control. Now, as you know, us men, we're not big talkers, so I had never asked my dad for advice, and he had never offered advice. To be totally honest with you, my mother gave us the sex talk. True. So he pipes up and he begins to say and mention everything that anyone would want to know or consider before you make a major purchase like that. So I immediately, as a professional, I'm thinking, and I'm like, well, my friends haven't been real good to me. Ego, pride, silence. I said, I need a new set of friends. So I began to think about this, and I said, I need to be more open. I need to ask more questions. I need to be more vulnerable. So with that, I said, I have to begin to figure out how to do this, and it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. It was so difficult that I'm going to ask you to help me figure out so you can figure out what it felt like for me to be vulnerable. So what I want you to do is I want you to drop your inhibitions. I know we've had a lot of serious talks. Drop your inhibitions, take a deep breath, and I simply want you to turn to your neighbor and ask your neighbor, how much money do you make? Huh? It's familiar? Exactly. Now listen, your discomfort comes from the fact that talking about money is the single largest taboo that we've left. We talk about everything nowadays. If you don't know it, asking someone how much money they make is a major no-no. We don't do it personally, we don't do it at work. I dated someone, I still don't know how much money she makes, right? So you just don't do it. So in the process of, well, what happens if I do? Well, check out my man here. His name's Greg Gant. Greg worked for Twitter for 2 days before a 3-year-old Facebook post resurfaced where he had ridiculed some homeless people in San Francisco. Now, if you didn't hear what I said, he worked there 2 days because the taboo of criticizing the homeless got him fired. We talk about everything. We talk about politics. How many of you have lost friends lately talking about politics? I mean, seriously, right? We talk about religion. We talk about sex. Remember when you thought 50 Shades of Grey was just a color palette? Now everybody knows what the Red Room is. So if you notice, we have talked about everything and we feel comfortable talking about everything except for the one thing that divides us the most, money. It is not uncommon for us to see wealthy people look and act poor, and poor people look and act rich. I mean, it is the strangest thing in the universe. I regularly have clients that come see me, and they're pretty much wealthy clients, and they show up in khakis, Levi's, some work shoes. They get out of a pickup truck, and they come in and you would never know they had a dime. And I have other clients that are less substantial, and they show up in an outfit, with designer outfit from Tom Ford, and an automobile that's worth half the price of their home. And the question we begin to ask ourselves is, how can this be? Why do we do it? And what we have to come to understand is that the taboo of discussing money makes us embarrassed, it makes us fearful. So we take a look and we take a step back and we say, well, why should I care? You should care because we live in the most abundant society in the world, at the best time ever. And people are silently suffering in financial desperation. Now, wealthy people will go out and they'll say, hey, I need to hire somebody. And we saw this in the last election. They'll hire somebody to make them save more money on taxes and things. While the rest of us, we're in the library or the bookstore looking for that book called Investments for Dummies, right? So we have to be careful to understand that it is a stigma and a taboo. So I was looking at some statistics. You are not going to believe this. 75% of working American families are living check to check. That means they have less than $400 anywhere. I mean, think about this. They are one emergency away from a personal crisis. Just one emergency. Last week, this is not a lie. Last week, I got a flat tire that cost me $450, and then the stem on a different tire broke, and that cost me $400. Just one emergency away from not being able to drive to get to work for most of our American families. And you might say, well, thank God, dude's not talking to me. I got $400, right? But the reality is that this affects all of us. So I'll tell you, on a whim, in my little traffic pattern, one of my buddies has a small business, and it's not really small. I call it small. So I stop by, and I get past the gatekeeper, and this dude's got the best policy ever. He always allows anyone that's a family or friend that if they stop or call him, he will stop what he's doing, and he'll entertain them or communicate with them. So I get by the gatekeeper, and I get into his office, and I see dude is like, he's like staring at his computer, and he's really kind of upset. And I had never seen this dude upset over the last 5, 6 years. So I look at him, he waves me in, and I said, hey, you look a little intense, should I come back? He said, no, maybe you can help me with something. I said, okay, well, what can I help you with? He said, I'm looking at my son's bank statement, and his account's overdrawn. And I said, well, why are you looking at your son's bank statement? He said, you know my son. I said, say no more. So he's looking at his son's bank statement, and the account's negative. And I said, well, why are you so upset that it's negative? He said, I'm upset because I just paid dude 2 days ago. And I was like, oh, okay. I said, I pretty much can tell you what happened. He says, how can you tell what happened? You hear me looking at the computer. I said, let me tell you what happened. So young Will was doing what 22-year-olds do. He overspent. You know, it's easy to do when you just swipe the card because there's no checking balance marks. I said, he overspent, and he was too embarrassed or scared to go to his rich dad and say, Dad, I'm broke, I overspent, I need some money. So what he did was he went to the bank and he got an early access loan. And then he said, whoa, and then nothing. What's an early access loan? I said, you don't know what a payday loan is? He's like, no. I said, you don't know what a check advance is? He said, dude, what is it? I said, okay, here we go. A payday loan is when you go to your bank, and in this case, you don't have to leave your phone or your computer, and you click a button that says, hey, if I make $1,000, I want you to advance me $700, right? And then on the next payday, as soon as I get my check, the loan shark, the bank wants their money back, so they get their money back. Plus they charge you a fee, 10%, 15%, 20%, 29%. Let's just say it's 10%. That leaves young Will $230. Now, he goes, but his account's negative. I said, I'm not done. I'm going to tell you what he did. So what he did was he went out and he automatically had some of his bills paid. Maybe he had his car automatically paid. Maybe his rent's automatically paid or his car insurance. So he did that. They bounced. One of them cleared and his account's negative. And he said, that's highway robbery. I said, you sit on the bank board. He was livid. Now, the question becomes, are you ready to go get a payday loan? I hope not, because there's nothing but sharks out there. So he says, what can we do about this? I said, well, obviously you need to talk to young Will. I said, better yet, you should probably let me talk to young Will and help him understand how not to get out of this. Because if you notice, if he only had $230 left, guess what he has to pay out of that check that he was supposed to have the money for? And he doesn't have it, so the cycle starts again. So he says, wow. So the question becomes, what if all of us could openly talk about our money situation? I challenge you to believe that over 1 million people, millions and millions of people, would feel comfortable going out just asking for financial help. They wouldn't feel the guilt, the shame, the embarrassment of talking about their money situation, because we all know we're supposed to be able to handle our money, right? Money would no longer be the #1 cause for divorce, meaning that we would have more solid families, which means that we'd have a better society. Men and women with equal skill sets would get what? Equal pay. You said, a woman said that. She knows, right? We get equal pay, and all of our stress levels would drop. I mean, it's just no question. So I've known this forever. So of course, I knew I was doing this talk, so I had to go out and do some research. And again, when you get ready to start doing some research and you start asking people questions, you know, we men, we do it better with food. So I met a bunch of my buddies for lunch. Now, we're doing what we do. Now, the only difference between this meeting and the meeting with my dad and my brother is that we talk about sex on this meeting, right? So I'm meeting with my buddies, and halfway through lunch, I say to them, guys, let me ask you a question. All of you are successful. I mean, they all do really well. Which one of you learned finance from your mom or dad or from school? Silence. One guy says, well, my dad, I did. My dad made me have a paper route. And he made me save every dime that I made at the paper route. And I said, oh, okay, cool. I said, so you're telling me that you learned all about charge cards, budgeting, wants versus needs from your dad's paper route story? He's like, no. So none of you learned anything about personal money management from home or school. Now, okay, and they all was getting ready to get back to the normal talk. I said, wait. Here's a better question. Knowing how hard life is and how long you had to struggle, because all those guys are self-made, how many of you taught your kids personal money management? And all of our heads dropped. Not one. Not one. So the question becomes, why? Is it because we're all just hiding, or we just don't know any better? I mean, it really is an interesting thought. So when you begin to look at it, and I asked you a really serious question earlier, right? Ask your neighbor, how much money do you make? Going home, I'm gonna give you a secret. Going home and saying, I liked his talk, I'm gonna start talking about money in society. Going home and asking your neighbor, yo bro, I laid down 150 last year, what did you bring home? It ain't gonna work, right? You're gonna lose, you'll get uninvited from the Christmas party, okay? But what if we broke the ice in our social media? What if we all said, you know, I'm gonna take my triumphs and I'm gonna share them. I'm not asking you to share your failures. I'm not gonna share mine. I'm not gonna ask you to do anything I'm not gonna do. But what about your triumphs? You ever seen that person that holds up the pair of pants, you know, and it's bigger than they are, and they go, this used to be me and I lost 80 pounds. What happens in the comments? Oh, congratulations, that was awesome, incredible. How did you do it? How long did it take? Was it hard? Did you gain the weight back? And that person answers those questions either publicly or privately. But what if we could do the same thing with our money? I paid my house off. How did you do it? Oh, that's amazing. How long did it take? 30 years. Right? What if you paid your car off? You paid your charge cards off. You hit a savings goal. Hey, I was able to hit my savings goal by August, and I did the whole year. I'm going to blow it out of the water. People will begin to feel more comfortable asking those questions. So I will tell you this. You can't go ask your neighbors how much money they make. You can share it on social media. But you can also have the money talk right after you have the sex talk, right? So you sit your kid down and you say, yeah, don't touch her, right? And then you say, because she's going to cost you this much money, right? So you have to think about having that talk. Think about encouraging the school systems to make it mandatory to teach personal money management in high school. I called the local area and said, hey, do you guys have this course? Do you have anything close to this course? I emailed and I emailed and I emailed, and I got no response. And you know what the funny thing was? Is that my brother works for the school system. I still got no response. We don't teach it. So I told you that the #1 cause for divorce was money, and it's not true. The #1 cause for divorce is lack of communication. But I'm always right, so what's the #1 conversation in the communication? Money, exactly. So what happens if we told every person looking to go get a marriage certificate that they needed to complete a financial course called My Money, My Mate? Can't get married unless you pass this course. We're going to save more marriages. So here's the deal. I challenge you to begin to talk about money inside your inner circle. That's not scary. Talk about it in your inner circle. And what you're going to find is it'll spread to your outer circle. And before you know it, barriers will begin to break down. Fears will be diminished. Societies will feel more comfortable asking questions and getting answers that they deserve to get. And it will all be for your betterment as well as your daughters who deserve equal pay. Your future has never been brighter. Thank you.